Thank you for joining us for 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Aaron Warner, who's completing his thesis in architecture at North Dakota State University. We invited him here today to speak about his research in the creation of artifacts in preparation for his defense. Aaron's work integrates technology into a space that then invites viewers to look both outward and inward. His piece is interactive, asking viewers to confront their own weakness. But it may also be empowering, as it represents an infinite view that one can reach toward, but never quite grasp. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. Aaron, thank you so very much for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist. I was curious what the relationship was between human frailty and personal weakness and sort of this cosmic horizon.
Well, the idea was that, if you look back in history and how, early civilizations inspired people, it often had to deal with framing something large and like something that made the single person feel insignificant. And that gets towards like the whole, weaknesses and burdens. They're highly individualized things. And then, we all have something that weighs on us. And so like the act of letting it go, not just on your own, but in a communal experience, then once you see that other people also carry such burdens, that then it can inspire people to, pursue what lies just beyond the horizon, something that seems unattainable.
There's something very serious about trying to represent infinity, but there's also something incredibly sort of like comically futile. So I was wondering if you could talk about a moment when you felt like you got close during the creation of this piece.
Yeah, the moment. The moment was actually kind of powerful. It was, because, I was like, first I was like, well, how do I put someone in the stars? And I'm like, well, I can't do that down here. Maybe I can put someone within infinity. And then I was messing with mirrors and projections and firing things back and forth and what the effect was. And then when I got that final effect where it just was like that tunnel with like a light at the end, that was the moment where I was like, dang. And you could like move your hand back and forth, and there's like a simulated movement.
Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be? Because it sounds like some of it was almost like a mistake.
Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing when I first started. Because everyone's like, had like two cameras facing each other. And it's like, oh, this, you can see frames for forever, and then same thing with mirrors. But I definitely had help. I know I had friends helping like bend mirrors back and forth, but the final effect that I had was on my own. It was in a dark room. I don't know, what was the question again? I'm starting to get lost in thought.
No, that's okay. So there's that moment of like the representation of infinity, and then you actually did it, but it was sort of by mistake. Right. So for the viewers at home that don't know how this sort of like came to be, you were messing around with projectors, mirrors, and a webcam. Right. This sounds like the beginning of a joke. But how did those things translate into something much bigger and philosophical?
So the mirroring is the big part, where, it's kind of like where you reflect. It's kind of a reflection, a self-reflection, more of a metaphorical reflection where, not so much as you seeing yourself, as opposed to once you can perceive this reflection beyond what the reflection actually is, because we're used to seeing mirrors every day, then suddenly you see the world in a whole new way.
There's this beautiful element where people interact with the piece. So it's not just a static object that you're viewing. And can you talk a little bit about how people have been interacting with it and how that sort of works with your concept?
Yeah. Well, the big concept is, like I said before, like how do you frame something like us, like a finite little thing, against the infinite? That seems like an impossible task. So and it's interesting the effect that people have when they approach it, where it just looks like this projection and they don't understand exactly what it is at first, and then everyone's kind of timid at first. They don't want to exactly they don't want to touch it because it's art, but that's kind of the beauty of it, is the interactiveness of it. And so once people whoa, and they see that brief moment where something gets shot into the end of the tunnel, and then they start experimenting with it, and all of a sudden they're feeling wow, having fun playing with it, and all of a sudden they're they leave that experience a little bit, I would say, uplifted. A sense of joy and play, but also a sense of the whole lifting of burdens.
There's a portal that's involved in this, and how did the shape, the design, and the layout sort of supplement the concept?
That was Stephen pointed me in the direction of the Jewish Merkaba, and the more we looked into it, the more how eerie it occurs throughout history, and the circle and its perfect geometry, and how many cultures have used that because of its cosmological perfection. And then the circle, so you get the perfect geometry of a circle, and then put 8 points on it. That's symbolic of the Merkaba's eight-sided shape. And then that's where the once it's entirely lit and then all the lines come together, it almost becomes the Merkaba on its own, transforms its shape because of that communal experience.
There's something really gorgeous about the larger sort of context of your work, but then you bring it down to a human scale through the poem and through the sort of confessional aspect of it. What has been sort of your response, people's response to that?
Well, at first, people are quick to say, it's a cult ritual, or it's the gate to Battlescar Galactica, and but I don't mind that, because they're linking it to something that they had associated with, and these are shapes and forms that have been resonated throughout history. So I like that people link it to these subliminal notions, because that just strengthens my argument of the perfect geometry and how linked we really are to our historical context.
Okay, perfect. At the very end of our interview, we like to ask a few questions about your creative practice. So I was wondering what time of day you feel like you're most creative?
For me, it's actually the morning. It's kind of weird for architects, as usually they're all about nighttime dwelling, but I'm not a big last minute cruncher all night. I value my sleep. So yeah, I like how I like to think about it is I go to bed not working, it kind of works its way through my brain, and when I wake up, I'm really ready to hit it with everything I got, and then you can get a lot done in the morning.
Do you listen to music or anything like that when you're making work?
Oh yeah, I listen to almost all kinds, country, rock, but the main thing that stuck since I was younger in high school when it started emerging was electronic music.
Okay.
And I guess I'll say a little bit about that. It's just I enjoy how each sound the artist makes is kind of an instrument on their own. They're using the computer as an instrument to make another type of instrument, as opposed to being confined to guitars or pianos or drums. So it's speaks of the artist almost more than anything.
Okay. Are you reading anything right now?
Not currently. The most recent book I read was called The Shallows, by Nicholas Carr. The caption is what the internet is doing to our brains.
Okay.
And it's really interesting. He takes like a psychological approach to, like different stages of mankind's like intellectual technologies, like the book, the printing press. Each way we gathered information. Now that we have the internet, what the psychological impacts of that have been. My brother turned it on to me, his friend on to him. So I guess maybe this could turn it on to any viewer and maybe you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
It's a good book.
You like look over and I'm reading it already. And then I guess my last question would be, what's next for you?
Well, right now my goal is there's a new school called New School in San Diego for architecture and neuroscience, and that's kind of an emerging field because now that we can like way more accurately like see brain, like what we're experiencing related to what's happening in the brain, that poses so many more questions for what architects can do. Plus, with like 3D printers being able to print out concrete slabs at 70% less cost of a typical concrete slab, that's like, oh, that industry is about to be revolutionized. And with 3D printers, like, that just begs what the ideal form is.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so very much for joining us today. And I'd like to thank you all for your time and your interest in the professional practice and the creative explorations happening here at North Dakota State University. So thank you, and for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.